Baby, I will show you how you can catch my vibe. And right away, got so much time looping in the blurry lights.
Hello, elite travelers. Today, we are going to talk Kentucky Derby and the African American history of the Derby. First, I would like to take this time to thank the Kentucky Derby Museum for a wonderful tour of Churchill Downs and for providing us with the history of Black heritage and racing. I would also like to thank ABTP and Louisville Tourism for an amazing trip to Louisville. Gotta make sure I say that right. Now, to my travel peeps, the culture of Black heritage and racing is kind of bittersweet. After visiting Louisville, Kentucky with the Association of Black Travel Professionals and Louisville Tourism, me and a few other agents took home some wonderful gems that we can share with our clients and our potential clients. BHE Elite Travel will be putting together a Black heritage trip to Louisville and hope that you will be interested in enriching your mind and continuing to learn more about Black history in Kentucky. We went on several tours within the city of Louisville, but a couple of them stood out in a major way for me. Did you know that the Kentucky Derby was started by African American jockeys and trainers? Yes. The people who started the Kentucky Derby and who started winning the Kentucky Derby were African American jockeys and trainers. Also, out of the first 28 Derby winning jockeys, 15 of them were African Americans, according to the Kentucky Derby Museum. Oliver Lewis was the very first jockey to win the very first Derby in 1875 at the age of 19. Did you hear me? He was only 19 years old. Very, very young. He wasn't the youngest to win a Derby thus far, but he was the first winning jockey in the Derby in 1875. When it comes to the youngest winning jockeys, there were actually two of them, and they both were also African Americans. The two youngest jockeys back in the 1880s and the 1890s were Alonzo Clayton, who still holds the record of being the youngest jockey to ever win the Kentucky Derby. And we then have James Soup Perkins, who was the second youngest jockey to ever win the Kentucky Derby. They both were 15 years old when they won their Derby. However, there was speculation that one of them may have been 14 and changed his birth certificate. Can you imagine winning a Derby at the age of 15? Of course, back then, there were no regulations on age when competing, but now there are regulations in place, and the current age is 18 years old to compete in the Derby. The horses, on the other hand, are also regulated, and they have to be 3 years old in order to qualify for a race. Now back to African Americans winning the Derbies. As I stated a few minutes ago, out of the first 28 Derbies, African Americans won 15 of them. That was up until the early 20th century, when prejudice and jealousy of the jockey's success resulted in African American jockeys not being qualified or able to race horses anymore. African American jockey history ended with Jimmy Winfield, and he was the last Black jockey to win the Derby in 1901 and in 1902. Knowing your history is super important, and I also think that as a woman-owned Black travel business, it's my duty to share any knowledge about travel experiences, to plan historical travel experiences, and to encourage each and every one of us to explore the world, domestic and international, and learn more about our roots. Speaking of roots, I will also share more about Roots 101 in my next session. That's another location in Louisville that I want to talk about. What I do know now is that we as a culture need more African American jockeys and trainers back in the derbies and winning the derbies. So, with all that being said, we got work to do. Until next time, peace and blessings.